Thank you, Venezuela. I now offer the floor to the distinguished representative of Uruguay.
Gracias, señor presidente. En el mismo sentido que lo expresaron las delegaciones de México y Venezuela, por supuesto reiteramos nuestro apoyo a la conformación del grupo, como ya se dijo antes, pero nos parece que los contenidos del plan de trabajo que el grupo vaya a desarrollar se deben ir viendo una vez que empiece sus labores. Gracias.
Thank you, Uruguay. I now offer the floor to the distinguished ambassador of Grenada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From a practical point of view, the delegation of Grenada would like to inquire of the Assistant Secretary General if he would be so kind to answer and to indicate at this point, since this would be a joint working group of the Permanent Council and the Executive Committee for Integral Development, which area of the Secretariat would be charged with providing technical assistance to that working group. Again, for purposes and objectives of synergy and avoiding duplication of efforts, and also in order to assist the working group as best possible, my delegation can make its own presumption on where that expertise may lie within the Secretariat. But we would like to hear from the Assistant Secretary General, because we would like the working group to have the full benefit of the expertise that is available and to avoid the duplication of efforts. My delegation feels very, very strongly about this. The very next paragraph in the resolution, paragraph 3, speaks about the coordination and cooperation and synergies in actions, and charges the Inter-American Network for Disaster Mitigation and the IAC-NDR with taking care of these things. And if the working group is also going to be looking at some kind of coordination and any kinds of areas that relate to that, we want to make sure that the working group is provided with the assistance that's timely to avoid that duplication. Thank you.
The Assistant Secretary General has the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much, the distinguished permanent representative of Grenada, for raising this matter, as you did earlier. In terms of, I think there are a couple of things which I need to share with you. First of all, the mandate is very broad, as was indicated by the distinguished representative of Venezuela earlier and Mexico. I think the mandate of this working group is very clear in what it wants the working group to do. At the same time, in my earlier presentation, I indicated very clearly that we would not want to forget what has been done already. A lot of progress has been made, and I think whatever discussion would take place from the General Secretariat perspective, we certainly will inform on that. Earlier, Ambassador Bristol asked about what has been done. I think in the first meeting of the working group, we certainly will give an overview of what has been done. And as I said, we have made a lot of progress since then. It may not be as effective as we would want it to be, but I think we cannot ignore that progress so far. So no ignoring of what has been done, but also clearly to see this working group as an opportunity to further strengthen what is already in existence and not to duplicate efforts. And I'm putting the duplication element not only in the context of what the Organization of American States is doing, our own Department of Sustainable Development, which will be the focal point for the support, to be concrete in your answering a question. But given the fact that it is a cross-cutting issue, I'm sure that other departments will be involved in looking at some of the elements of impact of natural disasters on, for instance, women and youth, and how that works out. So other departments within the Secretariat will certainly be involved in the total assessment of this process. But the lead will certainly will be the Department of Sustainable Development. There are also some other elements which need to be looked at. But it is not only duplication or trying to avoid duplication within the organization, but also our relationship with the Inter-American system needs to be taken on board, including the Inter-American Defense Board, the Pan-American Health Organization, the Pan-American Development Foundation. We have been working on on strengthening the coordination, the more effective implementation and servicing member states. And I think we would like to at least inform the working group on that. I think earlier, as Ambassador Fuchs mentioned clearly, is I think the objective really, in terms of concrete proposals to be made, is how do we strengthen at a local level in relationship to member states in the coordination among disaster mitigation agencies, how do we become more effective? This is an issue which was raised by the former ambassador of Colombia, and we had a session on this in terms of how do we involve member states in a quick response and how do we coordinate that. It's not so much policy anymore. I think we all know what we want and what should be done. The question is how do we implement that policy more effectively so that member states can be assisted. And I think there is still a lot of work to be done in that area. To find the right protocols, to find the right operational procedure so that there is no discussion about what needs to be done. In a recent meeting which we had at the Pan American Health Organization led by Dr. Mita Rosas, a proposal was made in terms of the timeline of response, I believe, if I'm correct, from 0 to 4 days, which organization, which entity will respond, who responds after 4 days, how do we go into the phase of reconstruction, and all these things. Now, I think those proposals are on the table, and I think it's a useful opportunity to have a working group to further flesh that out in terms of concrete proposals. I think the policy is established, the structure may be needed to be strengthened. We have some concerns about the committee in terms of its capacity to meet and to act. We may want to look at that, how we can strengthen that. The Inter-American Committee on Natural Disaster Reduction does not have a real secretariat, a technical secretariat. We may want to look at that, how we can strengthen that, maybe in the context of the Inter-American system. There are many issues which need to be looked at, and I think we have to keep in mind there were 3 other committees established 2005, 2002 and 2005 and 2006, all of them which resided, and I'm trying to answer another question which you raised, Ambassador, is where this committee will reside, this working group will reside. I think given the history and the cross-cutting nature of this issue, I believe there is an intention to possibly look at the Committee on Hemispheric Security, to have it as a working group of that committee. That is for member states to decide. I'm just saying that previous committees with a similar mandate did reside within the Committee on Hemispheric Security, and you may want to take that on board. The General Secretary will, of course, be as supportive as possible and stand ready to provide all information, but also be part of the technical assessment and the technical advice which we can give. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Ambassador. Well, if there are no other requests for the floor, it is my understanding that the proposal presented by the delegation of Argentina is acceptable to the members of the Permanent Council and Subsidy, bearing in mind the comments which have been made by the various delegations. I therefore wish to suggest that the Permanent Council and Subsidy agree to establish the working group within the Committee on Hemispheric Security, that the Committee on Hemispheric Security will report to the Permanent Council and Subsidy. I beg your pardon, Mexico is asking for the floor.
Perdón, señor presidente, que tome nuevamente la palabra, pero de lo que habíamos conversado y justamente desde la lógica de cómo habíamos negociado el proceso de la resolución, la intención nuestra y por las distintas dimensiones y variables que se tienen de la atención a los desastres, la propuesta había sido que fuera un grupo de trabajo similar al de Carta Social, es decir, un grupo de trabajo conjunto, ad hoc, que estuviera simplemente este mandato y que lo pudiéramos hacer de manera conjunta, siendo que también agradecemos las palabras del secretario general adjunto en cuanto a dónde está la experiencia y la fortaleza institucional para que pudiera ser el punto focal el Departamento de Seguridad, el Departamento de Desarrollo Sostenible. Entonces, en ese sentido, la propuesta, y perdón que lo haya interrumpido, señor presidente, la propuesta de consenso que habíamos trabajado, y es la que ahora quisiera reiterar mi delegación a la mesa, es justamente que sea un grupo de trabajo conjunto que tenga el mandato específico y que pudiera ser apoyado como Secretaría Técnica por el Departamento de Desarrollo Sostenible. Gracias, señor presidente.